Great. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us for our town hall on UK universities. My name is David Hawkins. I am the director and founder of the University Guys, an independent educational consultancy firm based in the United Kingdom. Charlie, are you able to join us and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so my name's Charlie Pybus. I'm Deputy Director International at the University of Bristol in England.
Great. And hopefully, Joey, whether you can join. Okay, well, Joey might be having some technical issues. So Joey Kirk is joining us from the University of Glasgow. He may have dialed back in just a minute. And then Nick, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Skevington. I'm the International Recruitment Manager and Regional Manager for North America at the University of York.
Great stuff. Thank you to Charlie and Joey and Nick in advance. And we'll hear from Joey hopefully when he can dial back in very shortly. So what we're going to do is we're going to give each institution a chance just to talk for 4 or 5 minutes about their institution and maybe some updates about what the situation is right there at the moment, given COVID-19. And then we'll delve into the questions that have been submitted in advance. So again, Charlie, if we can hand over to you just to give a bit of a context of the University of Bristol.
Okay, yeah, so we're a Russell Group university, so we're a world top 50 institution. And we're located, I don't know how many of you know the geography of England, but we're in the southwest, and we're very much sort of a gateway to the rest of the southwest, Devon and Cornwall, but also Wales. We are a comprehensive university, so we offer courses across health sciences, life sciences, the arts, engineering, social sciences, and law. We do have many different areas of strength, so we are particularly strong in engineering, and Bristol's something of a hub for the aerospace industry, and we also have considerable expertise in communication engineering, particularly sort of wireless technology. We are also particularly strong in the arts, and I guess our kind of beacon programs there are English and history, Bristol being quite a historic city, and also there's plenty of other arts around the city as well. In terms of social sciences, we have very strong international relations, and security studies is our particular strength. Economics, we're very quant heavy, but that does mean that students end up getting very well paid jobs, often in the City of London. We also have a very strong earth sciences. That's probably our most highly ranked school within the institution. We're strong in environmental studies, in zoology, biochemistry. Our vet sciences has recently received ABMA accreditation, so one of only 4 schools that have that in the UK. And we also have a very unique innovation program, which you can combine with any other subject that you like and give students an opportunity to kind of build a startup during their degree. The city, many of you probably aren't familiar with Bristol, but it's very sort of independently minded and very cosmopolitan city. And it also has a very storied history. So the Matthew that John Cabot sailed on to discover North America actually left from Bristol. And we're also sort of very famous for engineering. So Isambard Kingdom Brunel. So you'll find in Bristol many of his kind of exploits. So Clifton Suspension Bridge, SS Great Britain, etc. There's also quite a rich culture in Bristol, so many of you will have heard of Banksy, and again that's kind of gives an indication of the sort of bohemian heart in Bristol, and also music. So there's been a number of, particularly during the 90s, we were the home of, sort of trip hop, but you have bands like Idols coming through today as well. The university itself is, we like to think of ourselves as a civic university, so we're committed to making an impact locally, nationally and internationally, and I think that's really been reflected in our response to COVID-19. So we have a number of academic staff who are medics by training, who've gone back into the NHS, including our PVC for student experience. We have engineers building ventilators, and we're supporting with testing. We have an excellent centre for population and health. So they're supporting with kind of modelling, population studies in terms of health as well. And we're also doing considerable amounts of support testing efforts in the UK. In terms of what COVID-19 means for admissions, So we have done a huge amount of work, but a lot is ongoing and a lot is changing very quickly. So we've added some additional English testing because we knew that that was a bottleneck for students. So Duolingo, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and we're now accepting that, and that's something we've announced in the past couple of weeks. We've also confirmed in terms of students who are taking IB diploma and A-levels, where there won't be any exams, that we will be accepting those results as normal. And we're also going to be accepting the APs, which we know have gone online. We'll be accepting them on a like-for-like basis, as we have done before. And our law school is one of those that normally takes the LNAT. And for this year, so we have some students who are conditional on LNAT, and we've waived those conditions off. At the moment, we're still expecting, though, that we will be looking for LNAT and UCAT for next year, but that's something that we're, of course, reviewing very closely. So I'll hand over to Nick and Joey.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. So Joey has very quickly done some very clever technical things to get him on. Joey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great stuff, Joey. So do you want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of context about the University of Glasgow?
Yeah, of course. Sorry about that, everyone. I could see everyone. I could see you talking, but I couldn't hear. So I'll try not to be too repetitive. My name is Joey Kirk. I'm the International Recruitment Manager for North America and some other regions around the world at the University of Glasgow here in sunny Scotland, which you can see like pouring through the window. We've had a lovely spring since we've been in lockdown, which is a bit of a tease if anyone has visited Glasgow before. So it's been quite a challenge to stay inside. The University of Glasgow, we are one of the 4 Scottish ancient universities. We were founded in 1451, so we're the 2nd oldest university in Scotland and the 4th oldest English-speaking university in the world. We're a bigger institution. We're about 29,000 students from 140 countries. We've got roughly 1,000 students from North America split across all of our levels when you look at undergraduate, postgraduate, taught and research, so master's and PhD. To give a bit of kind of context just about the Scottish system, we're slightly different. We have a 4-year degree structure, so we're much more aligned to the US and Canada. The US and Canadian systems are actually based off the Scottish model, although we nowadays are much more similar to our English neighbours down south in terms of the focus and the number of courses a student studies in their degree is fewer than they might do in North America. So if you've not been to Glasgow, we are in Scotland's largest cities. We have about 600,000 people in the city of Glasgow and 1 million in Greater Glasgow. When it comes to COVID-19, a bit like Charlie was saying, we've been reviewing it day to day. We've now been we've entered into week 3 as to full-time working from home since we've actually closed down campus and students have gone home, although we still have about 500 of our students in our different residence halls on campus. While the university is broadly closed to campus, some of our research centers that work on particularly viruses and diseases are still very much at the forefront of doing their research in relation to COVID-19. And our teaching hospital nearby, where our student medics, nurses are still taking up their work, is very active in kind of with everything COVID-19 at the moment. In terms of some changes, I think my key takeaway will be leniency is key, and is what we're kind of been referring to within admissions and recruitment at Glasgow, is that we're assessing everyone individually and reviewing things as they come in and as the situation kind of changes. So as Charlie said, we're accepting IB exams as normally, AP exams, although they're moving online, we're accepting them as normal. We still have many students, particularly from North America, who are planning to take, say, the SAT or the SAT subject test that have now been delayed to June. So we're still looking for those exam results. Should they be cancelled, we'll of course be reviewing that as it happens to make some decisions. The big thing I think I'd like to share is something that we've applied to our own students here at the university, is that we have a no detriment policy. So for students who we're kind of looking at where they've been in terms of their education and then judging for them from that point. So if they've gotten worse since the outbreak of the virus, that should not have a negative impact on them. What we're trying to do is see them for the student they've been up until this point. So really trying to see what mastery of their individual subjects they have and how they might fit into our student body. when it comes to the UCAT and the LNAT, similarly to what Charlie said, we're still planning to require these in the future, although the LNAT there is more debate around, but the UCAT they're still quite strict on probably what we're going to be looking for when it comes to that. I will leave it at that for now and then pass on to Nick. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. And then Nick for the University of York.
Can you see me? Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Hi everyone, my name is Nick Skevington. I work at the University of York. Happy to give you a little overview. I'm a former York student and I also studied abroad at the University of Pennsylvania, so I have a bit of a sense of what it's like on both sides of the pond and how that works in terms of admissions. York, like my colleagues, is a member of the Russell Group, so we're one of those 24 leading research and teaching universities. We are a TEF Gold institution, so we were awarded for our teaching excellence a couple of years ago. We have around 19,000 students from 150 different countries studying across 3 faculties in the arts and humanities, social sciences and sciences. We're about 3 hours south of Glasgow and about 4 or 5 hours from Bristol. So we're in the northeast of England. And Yorkshire is known as God's own country. So it's a very picturesque, very quaintly British part of the UK, not like a larger city like Manchester or Birmingham or London. In terms of teaching, we offer standard academic programs across all your typical school subjects across those 3 faculties. Those are typically 3-year bachelor's degrees provided just with that 1 or 2 subjects of study, so none of the general education that would be common to North America, and that influences really the whole admissions process, as you may well know. We offer programs with study abroad and a year in industry opportunities as well. But as standard, you're coming in and taking 1, perhaps 2 subjects and studying that in depth for the 3 years you're with us. York is ranked 20th in the UK. We were the best city to live in 2 years ago in a national newspaper survey. And more than 9 out of 10 of our students are employed or in further study just 6 months after graduation. We offer all the sorts of typical student societies and student groups that you would expect. And it's a campus-based university, so students can roll out of bed, they can get straight to your classes. We guarantee housing for all years of study, and that would typically be a single student bedroom, so students wouldn't share, they wouldn't have a roommate, they would often have an ensuite, and they may be able to have a meal plan depending on what they're looking at there. A little bit like the system at Yale, York is a collegiate university. We have 9 colleges, 8 of which are open to undergraduates, and really that splits up our student body into smaller student communities, giving students a chance to integrate most effectively, get to know lots of different students across different programs, get the chance to experience different things as they're going through their time with us. And the university is about a 20-minute walk from the city of York, which is a very quaint medieval city with a big city wall, a little bit like on Game of Thrones around the outside, a big Gothic cathedral as well. The city is about 200,000 people, all your typical high street stores and amenities, as well as lots of opportunities for students to explore other parts of the UK, and well connected with regional airports not too far away. So lots of chances to get to know people. In terms of response to coronavirus, so far it has been a very fast moving picture, but typical things that other colleagues have mentioned. So opportunities for students to more easily meet any English language conditions, flexibility around admissions, and a general sense that it will be a year where it is challenging for students, and it will also be challenging for universities and somewhere like York to access all of the students we would like to, and to give them all of the opportunities to come to us. And I think when we're thinking about when we're making decisions, that's what's at the top of our mind. We have transitioned to online teaching for this semester that's just begun this week after the Easter break. We're currently considering all of the different options for fall 2020. I think a big thing to think about for US applicants and North American applicants is that sense in which we're not typically we are typically making conditional offers where we can, so we're looking for students to complete those final testings. And at the moment, I think there are still very considered decisions at lots of universities as to what happens if students can't take those tests. How best can we assess their suitability for the program they're coming into? But I think we'll do our best to do that and to be pretty flexible there. There isn't a strong sense that those students have been fairly treated. It is a disadvantage to have to take those final exams. We don't have a deposit either, so students can right the way through into July and August be still thinking about their options with us here.
Great, thank you, Nick. Thank you to the panel. I think we'll turn our web cameras on and then we'll be able to delve into the town hall to this. A lot of good questions submitted in advance, so we'll be able to go through those. And as we've all said, this is a topic that is changing very, very rapidly. Thank you to Jennifer in the chat, who's just alerted me to the fact that the College Board have, whilst we've been talking, announced that the June SAT and SAT subject tests will not happen. So I think even more apt that we are able to talk about this issue in the context of testing. And testing, I know, is a concern for a lot of people here. We've mentioned already the A-levels still being awarded grades. The exam's not happening, same for the IB. But for students who are relying on APs or SAT subject tests, I guess more pressing to meet those conditional offers, and I'll Charlie writing it now, having to respond to immediate news about this. What advice can school-based counsellors, independent counsellors be giving to their families about how the students are going to meet their conditional offers? And Charlie, can come to you first.
Yeah, so I think for us, I mean, for a lot of our US students, they're primarily offering APs. So at the moment, our feeling is that, you know, that students will have grades at the end. And I think until we see what those grades are like, our first instinct is, okay, well, let's just accept the grades as they come in. I think it's fair to say there's going to be a bit more, you know, universities, and I'm sure that I speak to the others here, understand that it's a difficult year for students. So we'll do our best to be flexible where that's necessary. But our hope is that the grades that students receive for APs, IB are in line with what we normally achieve. And I think until we've seen them, it's hard to make a judgment on that before those grades come in.
Okay, and so I guess the situation you're saying there is you will be as flexible as you can be, but as ever, it's a supply and demand situation at UK universities.
Yeah, I think that's one important point, is that depending on what those grades look like, so there's some fear, I guess, within the sector, universities, that grades, particularly the A-level grades, and for us that's the bulk of our students, if they come in higher than they would normally be, then that may cause some issues for us in terms of capacity. So there are certainly, particularly in courses like engineering, we've got fixed capacity constraints. So we want to be flexible, but it may be the case that if students do better than they're expecting, that some of our ability to be flexible will be taken away from us.
Great. Okay. And Joey, what's the situation going to be there for Glasgow?
Similar here. I think the main, I guess, potential difference with Glasgow is because we have that 4-year degree, we still have more flexibility when a student arrives. So there's a likelihood that some of the Scottish universities may be more lenient when it comes to offers in terms of what we're doing to move a student from conditional to unconditional. For our students coming from North America, the vast majority of them have already taken some of the exams that we would be requiring. So their condition is usually based on 1 or 2 exams they're taking in their senior year. So we might be able to make a decision directly from there. So particularly now that those June tests are cancelled. The other thing is that we're very lucky at Glasgow that I have 3 colleagues based in the US who actually work directly with our American population, who are likely going to be brought more into the admission side of things to review applications almost in a more American fashion, which is something that we've never done, but it's something we've recently started discussing and sound more and more like it's going to become a reality. So really seeing that the student is on track. I think the biggest difficulty when it comes to the UK university side of things is we're trying to make sure it's as fair as possible across students coming from all different countries, all different education systems. For our students, they're still getting some sort of final national exam grade, be it Scottish Higher, A-level, whatnot. So trying to make sure that our American students have something equivalent is key. So we'll be reviewing, likely at this point, the exams they sat already. If they are slightly below their condition, there might be leniency approved. And then looking at their previous academic history from their school and then what they've done in their final year.
Understood. So I guess then what you're saying is that most students who are holding offers from Glasgow may have met 2 of the conditions. They might have applied with a couple of APs, they might have taken a subject test, and so they're almost all the way there. And then if that last one becomes impossible, you and your colleagues in North America will be able to look at their high school transcript and other things and maybe see whether you've got enough to make a decision on.
Right. That certainly seems to be the path we're taking, which I think is the best way forward for us, considering that the majority of students do have some sort of previous exam qualification.
Great. And Nick, any different at York?
I think we probably are closer to the Glasgow position than the Bristol position in terms of number of applicants versus number of places for most programs. So I think we are likely to be flexible and lenient where we can be, and where students have taken maybe a subject test and an AP or 2 APs, or that they've got a little bit of their offer still to make. If they then have a strong performance in an honours class, or a strong performance across their high school diploma, or a strong ACT or SAT, I think all of that will certainly go in their favour. I would really encourage students, if they know which 1 or 2 UK universities they wish to study at, to send details of what they think they can still do in terms of testing, and to certainly inform us of what they can no longer take, you know, if their local testing has been cancelled, so that we know that they just won't be able to meet that condition even if they want to, and we can then follow up with sort of further information or further requests for details. It does thin out, so I think there are students that we think are still reasonably interested in coming to York who, if actually pushed, would say they're going to go to a US institution. And so it will be easier for me to work through those once I know how many are realistically strongly interested. So where they can do that, that's really helpful. I'm sure there will be others going to other good UK universities, and each of those will be considered separately.
Great. And just Nick, to sort of take that a step further, you mentioned other sort of data and other information. For counsellors, be they in schools or be they IECs like me, if students have got PSATs, they've got strong transcripts, they've got other kind of school-based testing, you would welcome a counsellor sending that to you, I guess a school counsellor, so it could become in an official capacity to help you to be able to get these students over the line.
Yeah, I think absolutely for school transcripts. I think absolutely for any testing that they've done in school, or perhaps any classes they've taken if they are doing like a program like Running Start in the state of Washington, where they're taking those college classes alongside school. PSAT, less crucial. It's not something we see much of at York, and I don't really think my admissions team are going to know what to do with it, although I'd like them to.
Okay, Joey, do you want to come in on that?
No, I would agree. Basically, we'll take any information that you can get to us, anything to help us get a better idea of the applicant, which sounds very American, doesn't it, in terms of the process? But we're kind of getting to that point where if you can provide additional information, we are absolutely willing to take it. Because for us, I always say, particularly looking at North American students, we're not recruiting to reject students or anything of the matter. We're looking to make a student an offer. So provided that we can make them an offer on what we have, we absolutely will. So the more information you can give us on the academic nature, the better. Even if a student has applied to, say, one of our a more STEM subject, if they've done any previous work in a lab, that's where this could really become important in terms of moving them from conditional to unconditional.
Great, thank you. And Charlie, just to come to you on one final point on the testing, I think something with the students I work with coming from North America to the UK, they find it slightly confusing as to how long they've got to meet these testing things. If we end up with an at-home SAT, an at-home ACT, students who may be able to take a test date going on in August, UK universities would accept a test even, if it was getting that close to the start date. If a student sends you a test score from August, that would be okay for admissions and meet conditions, would it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you have a student who's really up against it, particularly if it's that last AP, then do get in touch with us to let us know. It's not, I think it's just to say, there are constraints on us, but actually at that point we should have a bit more clarity on where we are. So it's more likely actually in August we'll be able to make a decision straight away, even where a student's in. Whereas obviously if you near miss at this time of year, there's a chance that we might need to hold students because the level of uncertainty that we're dealing is much higher than in the so yeah, we will look at students right up to start date more or less, because we know you can track the visa application and you can turn a visa application around very quickly. So even in September we'll look at students, and I guess particularly this year when there's more uncertainty than usual around when universities will be starting and how universities will be starting.
Great stuff. I was going to answer a question. You sort of touched on visas and English language thing there. Joe, I think we're getting some sort of feedback from when you're hearing someone else. So just a reminder, if you mute yourself when you're not speaking, because I think you're on twice. So there we go. Perfect. Okay. Nick, want to come to you then, and Charlie's just touched on the issue of visas and timelines, but linking to that, I know an issue which is great concern: IELTS and proof of English. What advice can you give to our attendees tonight for students who might not yet have met that bar to prove their English proficiency in order to then access a university in the UK like York?
Yeah, good question. So the majority of international applicants to UK universities will need to prove that their ability in English is suitable for study, and that's typically a condition of their visa unless they're coming from those countries where English is the main spoken language. I think the key thing you should do at the moment, given everything going on, is check university guidance and up-to-date pages to see whether we have altered those requirements, and typically institutions have begun to be increasingly flexible, both towards the higher end of selectivity and also lower down the sort of grouping. Typically institutions have been willing to look at lower IELTS scores, and they've been willing to consider other types of English language tests. So York is currently finalising which of those we'll move to. Charlie's talked about Duolingo, and there are a number of others. Students should also think about if they've been taught in English. So if they're, for example, a student from the Far East studying in the US at a boarding school, and they've been taught in English throughout their time in high school, they may be able to study in the UK and meet that language condition through that study in English, but we typically don't necessarily match those two things up. If they are, say, a Chinese national holding a Chinese passport but studying in a US boarding school, we might not know that. So please tell us and get a counsellor or get an advisor to write in and say, you know, we're happy to confirm the student has worked in English for this period of time and that their grades are good, so that we can waive any of those kind of requirements. Students should be thinking about how possible it is to access some of the online testing that doesn't require them to go to a test centre, and to maybe spend some time preparing for those different things. So the Duolingo test is different to something like an IELTS or a Pearson PTE, and they should be prepared for that sort of process.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Joe, if I can come to you, the question about for the students who need the particular version of IELTS, so for their visa status, they might be looking for the UK VI IELTS. My guess is those students are in a pretty tricky situation right now. Is there any advice you could give on that?
So at the end of the day, for a student to get a visa, they'll still need I believe it's the equivalent of a B1 English, which would, in order to meet UK VI regulation, they still would need. However, if they are kind of above that level, looking usually to start directly into a degree at one of our universities, they'll be above that requirement. So there's kind of less worry for that UK VI side of things. So for us at Glasgow, if the students coming into our foundation program, where they might still require something like UK VI IELTS, they likely still will, although there's a bit of a challenge there, but they might be able to enroll in a pre-sessional English or something to help get them along the way before they would actually apply for their visa to come to the UK. But otherwise, like our other institutions in the session, we're also looking at we've been reviewing our different English requirements and are about to make an announcement in the next 24 hours or so, actually, about the additional exams we will be accepting and I'll say the new updated scores, given the changes and all of the testing and the fewer opportunities students have had to sit those exams.
Great, thank you, Joe. I guess for those on the call, Melissa Schaefer, for one of the attendees, asked the question there. The UK VI for IELTS purposes is a governmental issue. It's not something that, unfortunately, the universities themselves have a lot of discretion, though. If you're listening along and you've never heard of this idea of what this special IELTS is, that means your students have never been asked for it. Typically, it's for foundation programs. My panelists are nodding at me, so I've got that one right. So if you are with a student who's been asked for UK VI, and obviously the British Council has closed down testing centres for IELTS right now, again, I would suggest to contact the universities and go from there. Charlie, do you want to come in on anything to do with visas and English language?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, primarily that would be affecting students who would be who might be coming through one of our pathways. So Kaplan International College, and a lot of those are now offering online options for students. So if students are running into those sorts of problems, they'd probably be able to study online, at least initially. And it may be that they do the whole course online. So yeah, Kaplan announced that last week. If they're coming onto our pre-sessional, again, that's gone online. So if students are having that bottleneck, then I think we've done as much as we can to ease that. And we suspect that anyone that's, so the only in-person pre-sessional we're offering this year is our 6-week course. And our expectation is that we'll be able to bring students in what's called a joint CAS. And again, that will give us a significant latitude to decide what we think is the appropriate English qualification. So I'm very hopeful that we aren't going to have many students that are going to not be able to study with us this year because they can't get access to UKVI IELTS.
Great, thank you very much. In terms of the issue of the visas, we're in the same situation as everybody else. Consulates and embassies and things are closed down, and I have a question here being asked about this kind of stuff. Would one of you like to just give a sort of an overview of just how quickly a UK visa process is, I guess, compared to other countries, that as soon as things are open, students can get their CAS letter. There, Joey's waving at me. For those who may be new to this process, it's actually a pretty straightforward process, isn't it, Joey?
I only raised my hand to say it because I think I'm the only one on the call who's actually applied for the visa before. So to speak to the experience, it actually is a lot more straightforward than it's made out to be. The terms are a lot scarier than the actual process. The big thing to note is that a student can't actually apply for their visa until 3 months before the start date of their program. So even if we all were to start in September, as typically the plan for most universities in the UK, students cannot actually start applying for their visa until mid-June. So we still have time. So the first thing to tell your students is not to panic as of yet. But in most normal years, for students applying from North America, the visas end up getting turned around by the time they apply to when they receive their passports back with their kind of initial visa sticker in is usually within 2 weeks. And that's without applying for an expedited service. So students should not really be panicking about their visa, particularly as of yet, because we do have loads of time, which is kind of surprising to say because it's not something we often get to. But we're doing okay in terms of visas just now. The thing to note is if we do have delayed start dates, as some UK universities have started announcing. So prime example here is Aberdeen in Scotland has announced they'll be starting 2 weeks later than normal. So we usually start mid-September in Scotland and they're starting at the end of September. So students who will be studying in Aberdeen will not be able to apply for their visa until the end of June. So note that we have plenty of time. The process is straightforward. I think the initial challenge will be students trying to make a biometric appointment, provided they're able to get out and actually go to a local center to give their fingerprints for their visa. And once they do that, the process is pretty seamless and done through the UK.
Great stuff. Thanks, Joe. Okay, I want to move on to another question that's come in. And we have a number of things around what we all know is confirmation and clearing. And for those who might not be used to those terms, the period of confirmation and then clearing is when the bulk of offers will come. So the bulk of exam results will come into a UK university. So typically that's A-levels or Scottish Highers, which would be July or into August. And then the university then can confirm a student has met the conditions. For those who have missed, decide whether they'll take those or not. And in some cases have to then say, sorry, that you can't come. And from that, we get into the process of clearing, where students without universities are matched with universities that don't have students, and a wonderful little dance is done over a period of a week or so. With A-levels not having exams this year, I think we're all expecting that whole confirmation process is going to happen earlier. And therefore, we're going to be dealing with a situation on a slightly different timeline. Nick, if I can come to you to start with, what should our attendees be aware of for their students from outside the UK around the process of having their offers confirmed or maybe not confirmed and having to find themselves potentially going to clearing?
Yeah, big question, but happy to try. I think the key thing here is that students should provide their final grades as soon as they can. So any final testing that they've done or any final grades achieved from the IB or provided from other organisations, so that universities can begin to best match those. If they have found themselves particularly badly affected by personal circumstances, they may want to add a note about that. So if their parents work in healthcare and have been under stress since January, or if their home situation has been much harder to allow them to practice and prepare for some of those exams, they should provide that. And then hopefully universities will, in some cases, in many cases, I would expect, be somewhat flexible around that. So where students are missing by a grade or 2 grades, universities may be willing to look at what that looks like. Sometimes I've seen institutions in the past offer alternative courses as well. So if a student, say, applied for psychology, they might then be offered something like psychology in education or social psychology, and students should consider those carefully. And typically for a non-UK applicant, a non-A-level applicant, that has, at least at York, been happening since about July onwards. So they're not often having to wait until the mid to late point in August. So if students are struggling to get that kind of decision from a university, I think they can rightly be asking, not necessarily telling, but saying, well, look, I'm going to have to look at my options really carefully. How quickly are you able to offer a decision on this? So that at least they then know if a university is unwilling to place them. If they find themselves not meeting their first choice and not meeting their insurance choice and thereby dropping into clearing, or if they're making a late application to the UK and going straight into clearing, they should be looking through the UCAS search at what vacancies are available and then contacting those universities in order of preference, probably informally first, to see whether there are certainly places available and to see what kind of grades might be looking for. And then if that is an institution that they're strongly interested in, to make a referral through UCAS to that, which is often sort of like adding a sixth choice to their UCAS application after those first 5 have been unsuccessful. And at that point, students should be prepared to move reasonably quickly. So there may well be a decision turned around within, say, a few days, and they may need to confirm that decision within a further few days. They should ask about things around housing, they should ask around things about funding, and finding out whether they're going to be treated differently or not because they're coming in through that later clearing route rather than in sort of a main scheme applicant. It is quick and it can be challenging for students, particularly given the time difference. So I think where students can, they should do what they can at this point to avoid it. But every year there are very successful stories of international applicants coming to different UK institutions through clearing. So it's by no means a second-rate route, it's just a different route into an institution that many often enjoy and are successful at.
Great, thank you, Nick. And Charlie, just to sort of focus a bit on the timeline thing, you and I know both plugged into some of the same sources on this information. Are you expecting the bulk of kind of confirmation to happen in sort of a couple of weeks, if not a month or so earlier this year than in previous cycles?
So actually, there's been kind of a very much a moving picture on this. I was talking with our head of admissions, who's obviously working closely with UCAS, and because universities have made the point that we're not really set up logistically to deliver a confirmation and clearing process at the end of July. So for us, actually, we need to, we have to set up a whole call centre just for 1 week with. I think last year we had 600 people in that, so it's a huge undertaking. So for us to shift that has been quite difficult. So I have to say, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I think that kind of big clearing may well happen at the same time. And if it does happen earlier, it's probably only going to be 1 to 2 weeks earlier. So that's our current thinking. At Bristol, from what we're being told, is that we're still planning, and I've got a meeting on Monday for the clearing to happen at the usual time. I have to say it's not confirmed, and things may move. That said, we do always, particularly for international students and IB students, AP students, and are often in this position, start looking at people coming through a lot earlier. So we will be set up in the usual way to deal with students that come through earlier, and we'll still be able to operate a kind of a you may find that later in clearing that we're accepting students who've maybe missed by a little more than early in the clearing process, but we will be talking to students and looking to place them, and particularly if they meet our standard requirement, there should be no problem for those students, I think, even at early July.
Great, thank you. And obviously, Joe, the Scottish hires come out at a different time. You guys at Glasgow are used to dealing with many different timelines. I guess similar story for you. You will just process things as and when they can be got to you.
As and when they come, yeah. Our Scottish hires come out at a different time than A-levels. It's about a week and a half, 2 weeks different. So we'll be setting up. The one thing we did last year was we actually moved to more of a chat feature as well, which should help us a lot this year when it comes to students coming through for clearing, so less call centery, which I think a lot of us will be moving to, trying to answer questions in any digital way we can. The one plea I would also make for those coming from North America is just to double check with the universities your students have applied to how they're receiving final grades. So for some testing agencies, they will actually mail them over to the UK. And as you can tell from all of our lovely backgrounds, we are at home. So all of that mail that is being sent directly to the university, we are not picking up at the moment. So I was speaking to our head of admissions today that our last, mail pickup was in mid-March. So we are trying to get back into the university mailroom to take the papers home to actually update our offers. So there's a chance some of your students might be sitting on conditionals when in reality they should have unconditional offers. So just make sure to check with your universities that they've received that paperwork, or to see what their timeline is for processing things that are currently sitting within the university mailroom.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Joey.
A surprise we've never had to deal with.
Great. Focusing on then to sort of looking ahead. Obviously, we all of us hope that we don't know our own homes as well as we're getting to know them now, and we can get outside and see people and do all the normal things. But if we don't get to a position of being able to start university terms in the fall, in the autumn, if we're talking about deferred starts, if we're talking about starting online, if there are issues with just people physically because of flights, things not being able to get there, there's going to be questions about how that works, about the fees that people will pay, about what happens if students maybe need to come in January. Nick, if I can come to you, what the kind of guidance could councillors be giving to their students now if they're thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get to the UK for September or October?
I think at the moment it has to still be a sit and wait picture in terms of the number of different changing things that are happening. 2 months ago, students were not thinking about any of this typically, or certainly 3 months ago, the turn of the year, they weren't thinking about any of this. And 3 months from now, you're not starting term. You're into sort of mid-July, early August point. So there is lots of things that can change. Equally, where students are being offered clear details about what will happen in the fall, I think they should consider those really carefully. I'm yet to see any UK universities commit very exactly to what they will do in the autumn beyond those few that are moving start dates by a few weeks. I think institutions are still trying to get the handle on how online learning works for this current semester that we've just started. And I think they're also waiting for if there is an overall government steer that says we can't be housing 18,000 students in one place, we can't be teaching them in big lecture halls, etc. If all of that was to be decided, then probably we would have to do some major changes to move to January, and probably that would be sector-wide. If it wasn't sector-wide, then I think different universities will respond based on their size and based on how resilient they can be in terms of finances and how flexible they can be. And really at that point, students should decide how comfortable they are with what's being offered. And the difficulty will be if there's a 4 or 5 month gap between the end of their high school and the start of their semester in January, or if there is a start initially online and then moving to on campus. And neither of those to me seem optimum for an overseas student who's been in a high school environment until this June. I think, if I was a parent, I'd want to think about those things very carefully, but that may be what a student has to do to then bring themselves through. Certainly at York, we will continue to accept deferrals to 2021 without any problems. So for students that have a exciting gap year plan or can kind of come up with one, that would be a good way to maybe bridge that gap.
Great. Thank you, Nick. I certainly think, and talked to Nick Hillman from the Higher Education Policy Institute about this. I think the idea that teenagers have been cooped up at home with their parents and not seeing anybody else for 3 months that are going to want to stay at home for even longer is possibly a false one. I think teenagers, if they've got plans, they want to get on with their lives and not see their parents again for potentially quite a while. So we'll see on that. In terms of the situation at Glasgow, Joey, fairly similar?
Fairly similar, yeah. And I would say that the senior leadership of all the Russell Group universities are actually in weekly calls together to discuss this. So as Nick said, trying to get that sector-wide approach so it's not piecemeal and university to university, but trying to get universities as a whole to agree to things. There's been a lot of discussion as to delayed starts, pushing all students back, and now I think there's more discussion right now of actually having undergraduates start closer to original start date and postgraduate students start a bit later. So we'll see if there is a staggered approach. For the undergraduate students, it should mean less of a challenge as we actually have usually smaller international populations at the undergraduate side of things. Postgraduate, which tends to be more international, will likely be delayed. However, we're still watching it daily to see how it's changing. Like you've alluded to earlier, David, it's going to depend on what social distancing requirements are still in place and when students are allowed to actually come into the country. So it's going to be a clear steer from the government, and then universities as a whole will work together on it.
Great, thank you. And for those who might not be aware of all the sector-wide things, and you may just be, follow UCAS in the process, if you do have numbers of students applying to the UK, following Universities UK or the Universities UK International accounts on social media are good, as indeed the Russell Group, if that tends to be where your students will focus, because you can see some of the sector-wide policy things in there. I try myself to push things out on my social media, particularly on Twitter, for those kind of things. But important to remember, coming from a North American perspective, that basically every UK university is a public university, and therefore has to follow the government guidelines. And so that's where the sector coordination comes in. Charlie, situation in Bristol then on this kind of issue, any guidance on delayed starts or fees and things?
So we're still working to a September start. I think where we are is obviously there's significant amounts of contingency planning that's underway. We kind of know when our decision points are. So I think when we were talking about visas, well, people can apply from 3 months before. University's going to have to make a decision before then, because otherwise students are going to have visas out there that they're then maybe not going to be able to take up, and that's significant implications for universities. So I think by the time we get to early June, I know it's not great for US students who may have a first May deadline that's coming towards them, though that seems to be shifting a little bit as well. But I think by the time we get to June, there'll be a lot more clarity on this across all institutions, and that's certainly our.
Thank you. We're going to go on and just for the last 10 minutes or so, we'll talk about advice for juniors, for those in grade 11 who are gearing up to apply for 2021 admissions. Before I do so, it's probably worth me plugging something which I know that my 3 colleagues may be not able to do so, but because I don't work for any university, I'm able to do so. Though we are quite a way past the January 15th UCAS deadline, UK universities work on a supply and demand basis. And it's fair to say that the sector across the UK is quite concerned about some of the main sending destinations to the UK, particularly China and India, potentially having significant drops in populations from that. I'm going to ask my 3 colleagues just to sort of wave in the affirmative. It is the case that actually well-qualified applicants who are now thinking, for financial reasons, the UK looks like a better bet, I just want to do something different, you would still be potentially, for certain courses, accepting applications for 2020 start? Yes, nods and waves.
With the obvious caveats of sort of med and dent and things like that, where obviously, there's still massive over demand and under supply. But for most courses, we're still making offers in the usual way.
Great. For those who aren't set up to see the video cameras, Joey is nodding very enthusiastically, as is Nick, that the universities are still keen to receive offers of well-qualified candidates with those exceptions. And if you go across the sector, obviously that will change. So if you have students whose family finances have changed, are suddenly looking for a different option, maybe British nationals who actually would like to come back closer to family, then don't think, even though we are now sitting here a couple of months after that January 15th deadline, it is too late. Still possible to get applications in and go from there. Okay, to turn to those last questions, and Joey, I'll start with you on this one. For those advising juniors, lower 6, grade 11 students, the ones who are going to be coming in 2021, what guidance can we be giving to them right now?
So I think the guidance for them would still be to be planning to register for those exams. I know a lot of our US counterparts have gone test optional. I don't see us at the University of Glasgow going test optional nearly to the same extent, just because, like I said earlier, we're trying to equate our international students to our local students who are taking those national exams. So while we might be able to be more lenient, I would still be advising them to be signing up for their AP exams, to be taking their AP exams that they're taking this year seriously, provided they are taking them in their junior year, because they will have an impact on their application to us at Glasgow and many UK universities. But to know that we recognize as a university that this is constantly changing and that our students in years 11 and year 10 are going to be impacted by this in terms of their university applications. Our focus at the moment is very much on the students planning to come this upcoming autumn, but we are having many discussions on the back end about those students and in years 10 and 11 and how they are preparing. So I would tell them to still take it very seriously. I know being home with potentially with your siblings or in a cramped space is very difficult, but those exams will have an impact on your university application. And it's time to really start working on that personal statement in the UK version of it, why they want to study what they want to study, if they had any brain waves while they are at home during this time.
Thank you, Joey. And Charlie, for you, any guidance to give to the students with upcoming applications?
Yeah, I think obviously there are some courses where we know that students are concerned. So medicine and dentistry, where we have work experience requirements. And that is something that we will have some updates, I'm sure, by the time we get to summer for those courses, what we're looking for in terms of work experience, because obviously it's going to be very difficult this summer, I think, for students to take placements. I think otherwise, yeah, our difficulty is that because we're a 3-year degree system, we're looking for college level credit from students. So that's why we ask for the AP exams. I do think, though, that next year we'll be doing work to look at whether we might be able to take more transfer students, perhaps out of community college, and certainly some of my academic colleagues hearing from people like Berkeley, how many students they're taking through transfer has been reassuring, and we've got activity plans to engage with community college. So if it's the case that students aren't going to be able to take AP exams, I think there may still be a route through to the UK for them through things like transfer.
Great. So just to kind of clarify that then on Charlie, the idea that a student at high school might enroll through some kind of college classes which would get them credit, that could fill a testing requirement that they might not be able to do if APs, SATs, etc. aren't happening.
Yeah, sure. So that I mean, it's something that we've had on the agenda anyway, is to look at more, and we're trying where we can move quickly, we're trying to do so. So to add requirements for students who may be taking other forms of college credit, because obviously APs, a lot of students will take those for the US system because they want to get the credit, and it's that kind of college level credit 101 class type credit that we're looking for. So we're going to look at ways that students could meet those requirements through other means, such as community college, and maybe not just coming into our first year, so they might do actually 2 years at community college and then approach us in the second year.
Great, thank you, Charlie. The questions coming in saying that college credit could be a community college, it could be a semester or a year at community college, it could be dual enrollment, those kind of things.
Exactly that, yeah.
Great. Okay, and Nick, the situation then what guidance would you give to students who are getting ready and gearing up to log on to UCAS, find their dreaded buzzword and all that wonderful stuff?
Yeah, so all of the above that my esteemed colleagues have mentioned. I think a big thing for York is we see lots and lots of families coming and visiting in the summer and trying to get a sense of what different universities in the UK are like, and often touring around. That may be really difficult this year, and I would encourage students to explore lots of opportunities to engage with current students. Lots of institutions have chat opportunities, both on their websites and through services like the Student Room, websites like the Student Room, to get a sense of what those universities are going to be like. I think then they should be sort of preparing their UCAS. You've got until mid-January for your UCAS application, unless you're an Oxbridge or a medicine or a veterinary or dentistry applicant. So you have got all of the fall to be refining which of those 5 programs at 5 universities you want to apply for. And I think students should use all of that time this year to really think it through. UK schools are not tracking demonstrated interest or thinking about any of that sort of stuff. So there's lots of chances to really engage effectively with what they're looking at, and spend some time now. You know, we're into academic students who want to come and study the subject they're applying for. Spend some time now reading and watching and thinking about the subject you're into. It doesn't matter if you haven't been able to do cheerleading or sailing or be on the baseball diamond for 3 months because of coronavirus. You can do all those other things, and UK universities will strongly value those in a way that some US institutions will value other things.
Great, thank you, Nick. Yeah, it's something I say when I'm talking to the North American families I work with, is we do talk about reading for a degree in the UK. And one thing students might be able to do right now is to read a lot. So there's certainly things there. Charlie, would you like to come back in on the previous point?
Yeah, I think actually there may be an advantage for international students this year in that normally a lot of students, their first experience at the university will be coming to an open day. we've had to cancel all our June open days and we're shifting it all online. And those opportunities, you know, we're working quite closely with our open day team about that virtual open day to make sure that it works for students who may be on different time zones. So I think there's going to be, certainly with us at Bristol, but I'm sure nearly every university, I think, will end up offering some kind of virtual open day. And whereas in previous years that might have been an afterthought and not perhaps of the same quality as going to an in-person open day, this year it's going to be a lot of people's core recruitment activity, and it will be of a completely different level to what it has been in previous years. So a real opportunity, and you know, you can kind of register interest for our virtual open day. I know that others have announced dates. So I would advise students that were perhaps thinking of visiting or maybe just kind of curious to engage with those activities.
Great, thank you. And I know all three of the panelists today, indeed many other UK universities are very active on the various college counselling social media. I mean, those of you who are attending probably still be posting this in one of the many different groups. So all these kind of updates and things will be posted. But I would also advise it, if you're not on a mailing list for these universities and others, it's worth getting on those just to hear about these opportunities, to share them with your students, following on social media and those kind of things. I leave everyone's email addresses up here just for a second whilst we say our thank yous and our farewells, to be able to say please do contact my colleagues here. I'm very grateful to Charlie and to Joey and to Nick for your information today, for giving up a little bit of what it does look like a very nice evening outside here in the UK. Not that we've got anything better to do. So thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to Charlie, to Joey and to Nick very much. And if there are any follow-up questions, please do get in touch in one of us. I do very briefly just want to mention that I'm doing another one of these events at the same time next week. The registration link, at least hopefully this one, doesn't divert to my daughter's school, which I was told that one of the links at the start did do by mistake. So we're joined by colleagues from Bocconi University in Milan, Jacobs University in Germany, and Trinity College Dublin in Ireland, to do the same kind of discussion, question and answer session on the students applying from the Americas and indeed around the world to European universities. So I'll go back to everyone's email addresses on there, so that's just left. So thank you to my colleagues. We hope everybody who is listening on is keeping well. We hope your students are doing well. And if there are any questions that we can help with, please do get in touch.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David, for organising. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, David. And
Thanks,
good luck.
Thanks
Stay
everyone for attending.
Thank you.